nobody understood I was overeating to fill the hole in my heart. You see, my scars are not physical. My scars of the war are emotional. And everybody started telling me, you're going to get too fat, nobody's going to love you, and that was the worst thing anybody could have told me because I felt totally unloved. Anyhow, I married the first boy who came into my life at age 18, and I had 3 children from him, and that was some of the happiest times of my life when I was a mommy with the 3 kids at my own home. From them, I have 4 grandchildren and 4 great-grandchildren. And I wish I could talk more because it wasn't all that simple, but I want to leave time for you to ask some questions.
Thank you. So you're doing a film, and maybe some of the film people want to ask some questions, or someone else have a question? Good story. Yes, go ahead.
What was the biggest difference that you noticed when you came? What do you remember when you first got to Chicago?
There was no maid in the kitchen. Of course, I had some English lessons at home. I took them, and the spoken English was nothing like I learned it in the school. I was way ahead in math and in science. It was just the language that was holding me up. And they started me in the 3rd grade, and then I was there for 2 weeks, and little kids are wonderful teachers. And they all, each and every one of them wanted to teach me something and speak a simple language. And then a couple of weeks later, they moved me to the 4th and the 5th grade and so on. And I graduated actually 1 semester after I would have had I been born yet.
Wow.
Any other questions? Yes?
Did you ever think about moving back to the Holocaust with your dad?
Well, he would have had to pay for it, and he didn't have the money. And my daddy, after a while, remarried. And as a grown-up, I can certainly understand that a man in his 40s needed, especially a European man, needed to remarry. But he married a woman with 2 children. And one of them happened to be a little girl just my age. So you can imagine now how I felt when this little girl now pushed me out of my daddy's lap, so to speak. And my dad died at a relatively young age, and my relationship with him really fell apart. Not because of him, but I was so resentful that he had left me that I just didn't want to have much to do with him. After that, we corresponded for a while, but it became more and more sour.
Any other questions?
What's the biggest message that you think, obviously being at the museum, there's so many things we can take with us, but what do you want people to know?
Well, number 1 is appreciate this country you live in. And when you turn 18, it's your duty to go out and vote, because you're tomorrow's citizens, and it's up to you to which way this country will go in the future. My generation is dying out, and that's why I'm here speaking to you. And recently we've lost several people from our Speakers Bureau, and you are the last generation who will hear an actual speaker talking. Don't let anybody stand up for anybody who's being bullied, because there are upstanders and bystanders, as you must have learned in the museum, and be an upstander. Hitler started out as a bully and people fell behind him. And I don't want to talk current politics, but there's some of that going on today too. And anti-Semitism is absolutely growing and growing even more. And if you don't stand up to it, then who will? As tomorrow's grown-ups, you must stand up to it and squelch it. And don't ever let anybody deny that it happened, because today you actually met somebody who lived through that era, and you have proof of that. And I don't know why there are so many deniers. There's so much documentation. But there are. So those are the main messages I would like you to take home. Be sure to tell somebody, your friend, your aunt, your uncle, that you met a Holocaust survivor today. And yes, it did happen. It's not a fairy tale. 6 million people died because of that, and many, many more lives were destroyed by it. Yes.
What do you think is the biggest reason that people deny the Holocaust?
Why people, the biggest reason? I think they're trying to put the Jews down.
Holocaust denial is anti-Semitism. It
Right.
sounds logical. You'll go to college, there's plenty of speakers on Holocaust denial. But, and they come up with all kinds of convoluted facts and statements, but don't make any, don't be fooled by that. The purpose is anti-Semitism.
That's right. That's very well said. You know, if you look online, you get, and you look at Holocaust and current speakers, there's so much anti-Semitism online, even today. And people try to explain why it didn't happen, and how it didn't happen, and how it couldn't have happened. And, yes,
So Agnes, you were young when it happened.
11.
And you were 11, right? You know, obviously a lot of the people that were older and had a lot more political understanding, let's say, at that. How much did you learn afterwards versus what do you remember as a child? Like, what were sort
well, my father believed in President Roosevelt. And he kept saying President Roosevelt is going to save the Budapest Jews. And it took me until I learned some history in school to find out that President Roosevelt did not save the Jews. So, we had a shortwave radio until we had to move out of the apartment. It was hidden, we weren't supposed to have it. And my parents listened to that a lot. I knew very little as a child. One of the interesting things is when I went back to school, none of us asked each other, where were you? How did you survive? Where are your parents? Do you have, I knew that some of my friends lost a mother or a father. None of us asked. And when I came to this country, nobody wanted to hear about the Holocaust. My two aunts were like two ostriches. Don't go backwards, you go forwards and assimilate, and you become an American, and forget about what happened. Well, you can't forget about what happened. I didn't talk about the Holocaust for 50 years until one of my grandchildren in the 8th grade asked me, surprised me, said, Grandma, we're studying the Holocaust. Will you come to my school and speak? And I said I had to think about it, and I did go, and that was the beginning of my speaking. And that's when people really became interested. For so many years, there was really nobody wanted to hear our stories. Anybody want to know what happened to Julia?
Yeah.
Julia and I corresponded for many years until she passed away. And by that time I was an adult. And then as a child, I don't know if I truly understood how she risked her life to save mine. But by that time I understood. And then I wanted her name inscribed. I wanted to buy a tree for her at Yad Vashem. And it took 2 years of correspondence with Israel because I had no proof. They had to take my word for it. So finally I got her into the Avenue of the Righteous Christians, and I was in Israel a few years ago, and I was truly touched by being there because finally I felt like I was at her graveside, and I could truly thank her for saving my life.
Have you been back to Budapest since you?
Never, and I have no intentions. My father put up a lovely monument for all the people who perished in the family.
Mm.
My cousin went to Budapest. He wasn't born there, but he went. And I told him to be sure to look up the monument. I knew where it was. I have a picture of it.
Mm.
The cemetery keeper showed him the lot. It has been desecrated. It's gone. So that's how anti-Semitic Hungary has become. Again, I think it's one of the most right-wing countries in Europe. No, yeah, yes, sir.
You want me to go ahead?
No, go ahead. I forgot what I was saying.
I'm just curious how your experiences when you got to the United States and you're growing up and parent, how did that affect, how did that motivate you to do anything you did in your life, or did it change your direction at all?
Oh, totally, because first of all, I wanted to go to college, and that was not in my family's budget, evidently, and I didn't know anything about working and going to school. And I even went to the school advisor, and I really blame her in many ways for that, because she just said to me, oh, finish high school and then worry about it later. But I was very unhappy at home, and I kind of figured it out for myself that if I went to nursing school, I could live away from home and learn something. And I actually had a scholarship to Mount Sinai Nursing School.
Mm.
And when this young man came into my life, I threw that away. It was very important to me to be loved at that time. I became number one again in somebody's life. He promised to take care of me. There's no love like when you're 18 years old, and the marriage lasted 15 years, and then some unfortunate circumstances came about, and I ended up raising my children by myself. But that's for another day.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Please come back and see our museum. You can't possibly see everything in one